I'm recording.
We're recording.
Hello, Pippa.
Hello, Andrew Pugsley. How are you?
I'm very well. I've made myself a blanket fort today, just like Luke Kempner did when he was our guest on the podcast.
Oh, is it all blankets? Have you put some duvets in there?
I say a blanket fort. It's a quilt fort. A quilt made by my mother-in-law and propped up on light stands.
Can I ask a quilt-related question?
You can. I have next to no knowledge about quilts other than about this specific quilt, but fire away.
Well, so when is it a quilt and when is it a blanket?
I think it is a quilt when it has been quilted.
Okay.
I don't know what the process of making blankets is. I don't think it's blanketing.
Exactly.
But I definitely know that you quilt quilts.
That's what I mean, is it doesn't, so yes, I hear, so it has to be sort of like padded little sections all put together.
Yeah, I think so. And this is a patchwork quilt, so it's full. It's like the the platonic ideal of a quilt with patchwork. It's beautiful.
You really live the life of Riley, don't you?
I know it's to show off. We're all experiencing tough times in lockdown, and I don't want to show off about my quilt fort. But it is hopefully producing marginally better audio quality than without it.
Well, that is. Yeah, I've literally made none of those efforts at all. I am speaking towards my sofa, hoping that might help.
Because of the natural inbuilt sofa EQ filter.
Yeah.
Now, but it's been forever since we recorded a podcast episode.
Yes, because we've had nothing to say. And, really because we normally improvise a song with our guests, and we realised that if we didn't have the chance to do that we were less excited, because it was so fun to make up a song with someone who was like, I couldn't do that. And then they do, and it's magical. So
we've had a little hiatus, but today's guest is quite someone, hey? Oh,
I mean, she's been working in the field of improvised musicals for a long time. And some people would say one of the best in the world.
A controversial figure, some love her, some hate her. She's divisive is what I'm saying.
She's very divisive, but also very strong in herself, in her inner core. So she doesn't let any of that hate that is often forwarded to her by Andrew Pugsley. She doesn't let it get her down.
It's you, Pippa. Why am I interviewing you?
Well, Andrew, it's because I wrote a book called Improv Your Life. And you said, hey, we should do a podcast where we interview you. And I thought, yes, because we need to sell some copies and we need to get people improvising. So it's a selfish and a very considerate wish that is being fulfilled by me being interviewed by you.
We're talking, publication date was last week?
Yes, it was published a week ago, less than a week ago, in fact. And I believe I am number one in the acting and auditioning texts on Amazon. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Hello.
But it's actually, as a book, it's not aimed at actors. So sorry, guys, who bought it for that reason.
Amazing.
Because I strongly believe everybody should learn how to improvise, and it would make everybody's life better.
And we should probably start at square one. The book is called Improv Your Life.
Improv Your Life, an improviser's guide to embracing whatever life throws at you.
Fantastic. And this is based on the course that you've been running by the same name for years and years. 7
or 8 years now, Improv Your Life course, where, I get people who perhaps don't want to be a performer, but recognise that there's some real skills that are helpful and applicable to life. So they come along and work on things like being more spontaneous, taking up space, being happy speaking, happy making mistakes, exploring your imagination, because a lot of us don't get the joy of making up a musical every other day or other week. So we don't get that sort of training in your mind can go anywhere if you want it to.
What was the first seed that then made you go from performing and teaching improv as a performance discipline to go, no, actually, this stuff might help people just in life generally?
It's a great question, Andrew. Let me answer it.
Hey, we got this interview thing down.
We have. So I started a thing called Sunday Assembly that some of our listeners might be aware of, which was a church for people who don't believe in God. So the point of it, sometimes that sounds quite sort of aggressive to people, but actually the point of it was not to retaliate against people who have a religious belief, but rather notice that people who have a religious belief have space to contemplate life and think about what they're doing. And then if you don't believe in God, going into those spaces is quite challenging. So you don't get that access to that space. So what it was to create a space for people who were non-religious to have the same support and place to think about what's going on for them.
Yeah.
Anyway, so while I was doing that, we did an international conference, and I was in Atlanta, Georgia, and Sunday Assembly Atlanta, because this little thing that I started with Sanderson Jones in London spread across the world like wildflowers. I was about to say like wildflowers, and we're in Atlanta.
I think wildflowers spread too.
They must do because they're wild. So we're in Atlanta, Georgia, and as part of this conference of all the Sunday Assemblies around the world. And I was teaching improv because I already taught it, corporate, like team building, that kind of thing. And actually then one of the people there, a lady called Marla, she said to me, "Do you know what? I really think you should pursue this because some of what you're saying is really making me think about the way I live my life." And I sort of went, oh, okay, all right, I'll think about that. So then over the summer, I did think about it. And when we came back to after the Edinburgh Festival that year, I think it was 2014 or 15, I did a talk at the Sunday Assembly about improv. And then about 20 people gathered and we just tried exercises and then just reflected on what does it make you think about the way you interact with people and what does it make you think about the way you connect with people and those moments, so most of the work actually isn't done in the scenes. The most interesting thing for me is that moment before you step into a scene and what comes to your head. And, as you will know, sometimes you just step on that stage and you're not just so in the moment, you're happy. There's other times where that tiny half second can feel like an hour where you're going, I don't know what to do. I'm going to ruin the whole show. Everything is wrong. I'm the worst. And it just fascinates me that we can, through improvisation practice, experiencing that gap, which actually stops us doing other things in real, not imagined life.
Has your take on any of those ideas evolved in the practice of teaching that course?
Do you know what? I'm constantly interested by yes and yes but. And the thing I'm sort of thinking about quite a lot, is about positivity. Because I think there's a sort of pressure around improvisation to always be having a great time. Actually, sometimes, we've done shows with absolutely sad, terrifying things happening. So actually, the idea that you might have to yes and sadness is what I've been thinking about quite a lot recently. So, for example, the pandemic. Yeah. In this time, we have to yes and that we're in this really not fun, quite devastating for some position. And that sort of sounds almost contradictory because yes and is so often sold as you can fix anything, you can build an imaginary car. But actually yes, this is rubbish and okay, I'm going to have to think about how I manage this. Yes, I've lost my job and I'm going to have to try and find another one, or I'm going to have to look at my savings, or I'm going to have to ask for help, So looking at yes and as something that has to be used in negative situations. And
we should probably just explain for anyone listening who's never been to an improv class.
What?
This phrase of yes and, it's a bit of an improviser's maxim. Probably the first thing you're going to be taught on any improv class you take. Just simply this idea that when you're presented with what we call an offer, when somebody makes a suggestion, says a line, does an activity, something, your response to that should be to agree with it and then to build on it. If we don't agree with something, if we don't build on offers, then we can't create something together. And that kind of maxim is a little reminder to be listening to the other person and to build with them and to work collaboratively with them, and is a bit of a nudge towards what our instinct is when we are afraid or nervous or shameful, which will be to say no and to block ideas and stop building. And we use this phrase yes and all the time because it's so part of our kind of DNA as improvisers.
Yeah, and we
end of coda. Really
great summary. And to be honest, I'm a little bit bored of saying that, so I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
So then to carry on with your question, actually, then I was thinking about no as a yes. So, which I do talk about in the book, which is because again, unfortunately, there is historically people abusing the improviser's code of yes and to be, well, you have to say yes when I say kiss me, or you have to say yes if I grab your ass. So people using and abusing the privilege of yes and. So then in those situations, recognizing that no is a yes to yourself. So that and this is really what the course is about, is really recognizing the nuance of that yes and that no. So are you saying no because you're scared and you're blocking because you don't know where the scene's going to go and you feel nervous, or are you saying no because you are not safe? So you are, so in which case we go back to Keith Johnson, who again, I'm sure we've quoted him before on the podcast, is sort of the godfather of improvisation. His book's in fact called Improv. There's a whole footnote about that. But the Improv. But he said there are people who say yes and they are rewarded with adventure, and there are people who say no and they are rewarded with safety. And what he doesn't say is either of those is better than the other. He's just pointing out that yes opens the world and no closes the world, and sometimes we need both. We need to know why we're saying either one. Yeah,
it's about using those tools mindfully rather than as a response to your own insecurity.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll know this as well as me when we're teaching you. When you get new people, they kind of yes and everything, but almost without hearing the offer, because they're like, I've got this rule, so I'm just going to use this rule. So it's not kind of embodied yet. It's just a phrase that means I feel less frightened because I've got the phrase in my head that will help me. Rather than, like you say, really knowing what it means to accept and build.
You ran this course for 7 or 8 years. How did it then turn into a book?
On my course, lots of people had said to me, gosh, I wish you'd write a book. This would be amazing if it was a book. Please write a book. And I said, yeah, and I will. And then I didn't. So, well, because actually I thought, I do want it to be a book, but I'm not quite ready yet for it to be a book. I haven't quite figured out what I'm saying. I can teach a class with you, because so much of the class is about the people in the room. So it's not about, it's not, here are the 10 tools. It's okay, here's some principles, let's play, and then let's see what it means for you. So I was like, so I can't write about that. And then, so I tried to write it a few times. In fact, when I was in Australia last year, remember when you could go on holiday?
What?
And so I was really lucky that Callum, my husband, and I got to go on holiday for the whole of January last year. Little did we know that we would be so...
Yeah, well, you racked up your entire year's worth of holiday
we really
just in the nick of time.
It was insane. And literally, just as we were coming back, we flew through Singapore airport and everyone was wearing masks. And it was the beginning of this is serious, isn't it? Anyway... Wow. So yeah, it was quite a moment to witness. So even when I was on that holiday, I've got in my notebooks bits of me trying to write the book, thinking about what I might say. But you know how it is. If you're not being paid for something, if there's no one shouting at you, sometimes it's hard to do these things. Then, luckily, someone who might pay me and shout at me got in touch, and she actually got in touch with my agent, because obviously I work as a comedian and performer, so I have an agent. And that was not for you, Andrew. I know you know that. But
thanks.
And said, does any of your acts have any book they want to write? And I'd actually spoken to my agent about it. Said, I would love to write this book. And so, lo and behold, I think it was the week after the first lockdown was announced, after we'd had to clear, you remember that sad week where everything was just slowly being deleted from the diary. And they said, we'd love you to write the book. So in many ways, it saved my ass as well. Because obviously there was no work coming in, and then suddenly, and what a gift to be given. You're going to need probably like 4 months to sit and write without any distractions.
Yeah.
And the Prime Minister did say you may not leave your house.
Ladies and gentlemen of the country, Pippa has to write a book. During this difficult time, we need to support her by all staying at home and giving her some space, okay?
I just want everyone at home listening to realise how grateful I am for that sacrifice you all made. So thank you, because it did make it much easier to to get it done. So yeah, so I started writing it in beginning of April, I think. And it was done by October.
Does it come easily to you? Are you a writer who just slaves over every sentence and hates every second of it? Or what was the process
My
like?
process, and again, I'm grateful to improvisation for this, is just to vomit it out, and it will be a horrible mess, and then you just have to go back and tidy it up. So within the mess, there'll be some gems. So actually, when I did like the last draft of everything, and I found the first draft of the first chapter, it's got about 1,000 exclamation marks on every single sentence, and loads of it doesn't make sense. There's stories that I shared that I was like, no one's going to understand why that's not an interesting story to anyone who's not, my mum and dad, or that kind of thing. So probably, in terms of writing, I probably wrote the same amount again.
Did your viewpoint on anything change as you were writing it? Did you crystallize anything, or go, actually, I've been looking at this the wrong way? Did the writing process change any of the content like that?
I tell you, one thing that came up for me was I wrote about Endless Box.
Just clarify, that's a traditional improv game where somebody holds an imaginary box and the other person has to pick imaginary items out of the box and name them.
And I often do that as an exercise just to give people to free up their brain. And I always say, don't worry about what comes out, And when we're teaching on Zoom, which is what we're doing at the moment, I get people to mute themselves so only they hear what's coming out.
Oh, interesting.
It's a little Zoom tip for everybody teaching. But then I had an interesting workshop where someone brought some quite difficult stuff into the space, as in their offers were not beautiful, let's put it like that. And their response was, and when I challenged that, their response was, but you said we don't have to judge what we say. Which obviously was true for that exercise, but not true for life. So in the book, I think after the Endless Box, it just says don't judge, but I feel like maybe it should say, so this is really about things, wanting to move things on already. It should say, do an exercise and don't worry when stuff comes out. However, we've got to be free, we've got to free up our minds. However, we are still responsible for the content that we bring into the room and how it affects other people. And I think that's a big thing improv is learning right now, is how much we haven't really set that in stone.
And I don't think that's really a contradiction either, is it? Because we want people to commit to and own their offers, as well as performing them without judgment. And so part of that is saying, what I absolutely take ownership of what I have put into the room, what I have given out, and that was my instinctive choice. Yeah,
and we've all made an offer that we've then gone, oh God, where did that come from? Or what did I say? And the most important thing is that you acknowledge that was not cool. I apologise for any harm that's caused, and then we can move on. I think sometimes we're so ashamed of failing that we just either pretend it didn't happen, or we hide it, or we laugh it off in a way that we never actually really let it land. So I often talk about offers landing. So let's say relationship breaks up, and you just go, oh well, it wasn't working. Oh well, anyway, on to the next one. But we don't actually allow that. I don't know who that guy was, but we don't let that failure. Like, we don't let ourselves sit and say, I'm really sad about that. It was really hard, and I'm struggling with it. I'm going to struggle with it, and then I'm going to allow the wisdom of it to come through. Okay, well, why didn't it work out? Was it just wasn't right? We just weren't suited. Was I being a tit? Was it So that we just give a chance for those things. And that, again, that comes back to the show, the performance. How often we don't let offers land because we're so busy thinking what should happen next. So we break up in a relationship, we go, right, okay, I've got to find the next person because I'm getting old. I've got to find the next person because I can't bear to be by myself. And then in a scene, you make an offer to me and I go, yes, and let's do that, rather than let it land, let me think, let me feel how I want to respond. And then that could be small or it could be big, as in, by which I mean time-wise, that could be 10 seconds, it could be, not in a show, but in real life, it could be like 2 years. But letting failure turn into wisdom.
I do like the idea of just in the middle of a show we have to pause for a couple of years because you really want to make sure an offer is landed.
I do say at the beginning of the book, I talk about how I noticed all this stuff when we were doing Showstopper, but there's no way you can do this work during the show when you've been asked to improvise a Hamilton-style song about Portsmouth Dock.
Yeah.
So just in case people at home were worried that I would be on stage trying to give myself a therapy lesson.
Their relationship in 1996 was my fault. Pippa, do the dance moves.
I want this to be authentic.
You also recorded an audiobook version of
Yes,
your
I did,
book.
with the wonderful Ali James and Joshua Jackson. We were in real life together in a room around a massive table, obviously like far away from each other.
Imagine.
It was so fun, but we only did, I think we did like 2 hours, the three of us, because they were just doing the exercises, so it wouldn't be me going, person A says, and then person B says. When I got home, I had to have a nap because I was so not used to being with people and I was so overexcited that I had to have a little sleep. But recording the audiobook was really fascinating because the wonderful producer, David Aropa, he was like, just read it and don't think about it. Just literally just sit there and read it out loud. And so the microphone was actually quite far away from me. And you just read it like, he was like, don't overthink it. And he said, I'll stop you if you stumble over any words. But other than that, just keep going. So it was quite strange because he doesn't want you to be like, I'm really trying to read this book in a way that you understand what I'm trying to say. My fear was I would do the audiobook and I would be like, what have you written? Because my first time rereading it, having not getting a physical copy for ages. So I was like, okay, what if I'm recording this and I think this doesn't make any sense? But luckily, it did still make sense. Did find 2 typos. The producer said he wished everybody read the book out loud before it went to publishing because there's always some typos. So people at home, if you read it, when you read it, I should say when you read it, take a picture of any typos you find, please, and send them to my Instagram so that I can put them in my stories and mock myself.
Do you think you'll write more books about improv, about anything else?
I don't know if I'd write another one about improv, but never say never. Do you know, I read this amazing book. So even though I know we're here to plug my book, Pippa Evans, Improv Your Life, please buy it. I found this great book by a guy called Rob Hopkins called From What Is to What If. And I was like, this is the follow-on book from my book. So I feel like people need to read my book and then read his book because his book's about unleashing the power of imagination to create the future world we want. And I think in the last couple of pages of my book, I say, what could the future look like? And I was like, oh my gosh, it's great. So everyone should look at that book. So just like thinking, if I was going to write about improv again, I would probably still stick with this life theme. And maybe it would be more of a workbook version or something like that. But having done Edinburgh Festival for so many years and realising that sometimes you're doing a show because you want to do a show and sometimes you're doing a show because you feel like you should do a show. And noticing quite clearly that the shows that are very good are the ones that you wanted to do. I would like to apply that learning to books so that I never write a book that I'm just writing because someone asked me to.
Well, Pippa Evans' Improv Your Life, An Improviser's Guide to Embracing Whatever Life Throws at You is out now from Hodder Books in paperback, e-reader and audiobook editions.
Please buy it so that I can leave London.
Now, as we mentioned at the top of the episode, unfortunately at the moment we're unable to get together in a room with one of our amazing celebrity special guests and make up a song, but we wanted to finish the episode with a song nevertheless. Now, we've been doing some live-streamed performances of Showstopper the Improvised Musical, and appropriately enough, given what we were discussing on the podcast today, the last episode we did on the 27th of February this year was called The Right Way to Find Love, and was all about an author navigating his romantic life for some reason aboard a yacht. Anyway, so what we're going to leave you with now is Adam Megiddo, along with Ruth Bratt, Joshua C. Jackson, and Pippa Evans, singing the title song from that musical, The Right Way to Find Love. I don't think you need too much in the way of context to understand this. It's about an author, romantic entanglements, they're aboard a yacht. Oh yes, and there was an incident with some pirate ducks known as the Quacken incident or the Quackening, which might explain some of the duck metaphors in the song, but don't worry too much about that.
I wonder how we should love. It seems so easy. I wonder how we open our hearts. Who shows us the way? Who shows us the way?
I wonder who we should love. Is there a way to choose, or is it chosen? I wonder how we learn to love. How do you break a heart that's always been frozen?
It seems impossible. It seems impossible. But sometimes you have to tell a duck from a dove. It seems impossible. It seems impossible to find the right way to love. It seems impossible. It seems impossible. Sometimes you have to tell a duck from a dove. It seems impossible. It seems impossible. Is there a right way to find love?
Oh, doesn't Adam Megiddo have just the most beautiful voice? Lovely. If you want to hear more of that episode and find out what on earth the quackening is, you can go to our website, showstopperthemusical.com, and you'll find links there where you can rent all of our former episodes. And you can also buy tickets to our upcoming live stream performances. The next ones are on March the 26th and 27th. You can watch us live, send us your suggestions via the chat feed, and we make up a musical for you in your living room. You can follow us on all of the usual social media platforms: Twitter at The Showstoppers, Facebook at The Showstoppers, Instagram at Showstopper Musical, and our website www.showstopperthemusical.com. And listen out on this feed for a new series of the Showstopper podcast with lots of exciting guests just as soon as it is legal and logistically possible for us to record it. Thank you to today's meta guest, Pippa Evans. Buy her book. Take care, everyone. Bye.